The tennis world was already holding its breath, but nobody saw this coming. Alex Eala, the girl who packed up her entire life at 13 years old, left the Philippines, left her family, left everything familiar, and flew to a tiny island in Spain chasing something most people told her was impossible. That girl was now watching the very place that built her become the sharpest weapon pointed directly against her. Because when Alex Eala walked through the gates of the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca just days before clay season began, something in the air shifted. The training footage hit social media within hours. The reactions from rivals were immediate, and the questions that followed shook the entire WTA tour down to its foundation. Was this a coincidence? Was this calculated? And here is the question nobody in mainstream tennis media wanted to ask out loud. What does Alex Eala know that the rest of us are only just beginning to figure out? Stay with this story, because it goes so much deeper than a coaching change. To understand why this hits so differently, you have to go back to where it all started. Not at a Grand Slam. Not under the floodlights of a WTA 1000. But in the back of a car at a Madrid airport, where a 13-year-old girl from the Philippines spotted the greatest clay court player who ever lived walking through the terminal. Alex Eala did not freeze. She did not hesitate. Her family chased Rafael Nadal down right there in the airport. That moment, chaotic, unplanned, almost comically impossible, became the very first chapter of one of the most extraordinary stories modern tennis has ever produced. Eala had come to Spain for a trial week at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Manacor, Mallorca. 1 week to prove she belonged. 1 week that turned into years. 1 week that changed everything. She moved to that island at 13. She left her country, her friends, her comfort zone, her language, her childhood. She traded all of it for clay courts, Spanish summers, and the kind of brutal daily discipline that the Nadal Academy demands from everyone who walks through its gates. She did not just attend the academy. She lived inside it. She breathed it. She became it. She graduated in 2023, and when she finally walked off those Mallorcan courts as a professional, the only tennis life she had ever truly known was the one she had built inside those walls. The academy was not just her training ground. It was her home. Rafa Nadal was the closest thing to a guiding legend she had ever encountered up close. She once admitted in an interview that she left a private message from Nadal unread for 4 days during the 2025 Miami Open, not out of disrespect, but because her phone was completely overwhelmed with notifications after she had just beaten 3 Grand Slam champions in a row. When she finally saw his message, she was mortified. She said she almost died. That was the nature of their relationship. Pure reverence, deep gratitude, and a kind of nervousness that never fully went away. She was not just a product of the academy. She was its living, breathing, world-ranked proof of concept. By 2025, Eala had become the first Filipino to break into the WTA Top 100. She defeated Yelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Iga Swiatek in consecutive matches as a wild card at the Miami Open, something no player in WTA history had ever done before. She won her first WTA 125 title. She represented the Philippines with gold medals at the SCA Games. She built an identity so powerful and so unique that Nike designed a hair tie in the shape of the Philippine national flower specifically for her Wimbledon debut. The Rafa Nadal Academy was her foundation, her roots, her origin story. So when the woman she defeated at Miami, Iga Swiatek, suddenly appeared at those same courts just days before the 2026 clay season began, training with Nadal himself and his former longtime assistant coach Francisco Roig, the tennis world did not just raise an eyebrow. It held its breath completely. And here is where the story gets complicated, because what happened next was not just a coaching change. It was a power shift. And Alex Eala was standing right in the middle of it. April 2026. The clay season was approaching. Red dirt was being rolled out across Europe. Every player on tour was sharpening her weapons. But Swiatek was in crisis, and not the kind of crisis casual fans would notice from the outside. She was still ranked world number 4. Still a 6-time Grand Slam champion. Still the most decorated player of her generation. But by her own standards, the season had been a slow-motion disaster. She lost in the quarterfinals at the Australian Open, then again in Doha, then again at Indian Wells. Then came Miami, where she walked onto the court and was stunned in the second round by Magda Linette, despite winning the opening set. It was her first second-round loss on tour since 2021. In the mixed zone afterward, Swiatek looked shaken in a way that went beyond a bad week. She said tennis felt complicated in her head. She said she was confused. Days later, she confirmed she was splitting from coach Wim Fissette. The tennis world waited to see what she would do next. What she did next, nobody could have scripted. Swiatek traveled to the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca. She hired Francisco Roig, the man who spent 17 years as Nadal's assistant coach, as her new head coach. And then the training footage leaked. Swiatek hitting clay court forehands on the exact same courts where Alex Eala had trained since she was 13 years old. Rafa Nadal himself demonstrating his signature buggy whip forehand. Feeding balls to the Polish world number 4. Standing in her corner. The video went viral within hours. But here is the detail that almost nobody in mainstream coverage actually talked about. At the exact same time Swiatek arrived at the academy, Eala was also there. The Rafa Nadal Academy's own social media page posted a photo of both of them together, smiling, reunited at the academy, just as they had been during Eala's graduation ceremony in 2023, when Swiatek had been an invited guest. The caption read, "Feels like yesterday. Do you remember the last time?" Wholesome on the surface. But underneath that image, a question was quietly forming in the minds of fans and analysts all over the world. Eala had beaten Swiatek in Miami. Swiatek had beaten Eala in Madrid shortly after. Now, as the clay season began again, Swiatek had moved directly into Eala's home, her sanctuary, her academy, and had recruited Nadal's own coaching bloodline into her corner. Was this a coincidence? Or was this a message? Because the thing about power moves in tennis is that they rarely look like power moves. Sometimes they look like coaching decisions. Sometimes they look like friendly reunions. But they feel like something else entirely. When the training footage went public, the response from the tour was immediate and it was electric. Jessica Pegula was the first to speak. She was on a podcast when she watched the clip in real time. Her reaction was immediate and unfiltered. She said she saw the footage and thought this was bad for everybody. She was not done. She said it should be illegal, that it should not be allowed. Madison Keys echoed her almost instantly with just 2 words, "Oh God." 2 words that somehow captured the exact anxiety of every player about to face Swiatek on red dirt. Danielle Collins put it in the sharpest terms of anyone. She said when you have had the kind of success Swiatek has had, the only person you can truly work with at that level is someone who has operated at the absolute highest heights. And then she added the warning that echoed through every locker room from Stuttgart to Roland Garros. She said it was going to be scary for everybody on tour to see what comes next. Former coach Rick Matchy went even further, writing that Nadal's influence on Swiatek would be less about tactics and more about psychology. He wrote that every word from Rafa is a gold nugget, and that where he could truly flip the script was not strategically but mentally. Mentally. That word landed differently because everyone watching knew exactly what it implied. Swiatek's crisis was not about her forehand or her footwork. It was about something deeper, something internal. And if Nadal, the man who invented mental fortitude on clay, could unlock whatever she had lost, the rest of the tour was in serious, serious trouble. But while the WTA's biggest names debated the seismic implications of the Swiatek-Nadal connection, the fans back in the Philippines were asking a completely different question. Not whether this was scary for the tour, but what this meant for Alex Eala specifically. Because Eala was not just a former academy student anymore. She was now ranked inside the top 50. She had beaten Swiatek before. The clay season, the very surface where Eala had historically struggled, was about to begin. And Swiatek had just parked herself inside the one institution that had shaped Eala's entire career, borrowed its most powerful resources, and built what analysts were already calling the most dangerous clay court partnership in the women's game. Filipino fans were not laughing. They were watching very closely. And then the Linz Open happened, and everything that had been simmering quietly came rushing to the surface. Because while the world was busy debating whether Swiatek's Nadal connection was brilliant or unfair, something else was unfolding at the same tournament where Eala was beginning her own clay season, fresh from her own work with Tony Nadal, Rafael's legendary uncle, also at the same Mallorcan academy. Eala had worked with Tony directly in the days before Linz. In her post-match press conference after beating Julia Grabher in the first round, she was glowing when asked about it. She said it was incredible that she felt so blessed to have Tony as part of the team, and that if someone had told her years ago this would happen, her mind would have been completely blown. So here was the full picture forming right in front of everyone. Eala working with Tony Nadal. Swiatek working with Francisco Roig and Rafael Nadal himself. Both of them connected to the same family, the same academy, the same clay court philosophy, but pointed at each other like opposing arrows. And in her round of 16, Eala faced Jelena Ostapenko, the same player she had beaten at Miami in 2025. Except this time something strange was unraveling in the crowd. Ostapenko, struggling in the second set and trailing badly, stopped play twice to confront spectators directly. The atmosphere turned hostile and combustible. A match that was supposed to be about tennis became about something raw, about pressure, about crowd psychology, about who could hold their nerve when everything around them caught fire. Back on social media, the narrative was already being written. Filipino fans noted that every time Eala rose in the rankings, new obstacles seemed to appear from unexpected directions. The woman who had beaten Eala in Madrid just months after Eala beat her in Miami had now embedded herself inside the one institution that shaped Eala's entire career. And Roig, Swiatek's new coach, had reportedly left his previous role without directly informing the player he was leaving, raising uncomfortable questions about how he managed professional relationships. The optics were becoming impossible to ignore. The academy that gave Eala everything was now being used to rebuild the career of her fiercest rival. The coaching tree that nurtured Eala was being channeled systematically into the corner of the woman she was most likely to meet on the biggest stages in the world. And the fans who had followed every step of Eala's rise from Quezon City to Wimbledon were connecting dots in ways that made the tennis establishment deeply uncomfortable. Was this just elite strategy? Or was someone reshaping the entire board while Eala was still finding her footing? Alex Eala grew up on those courts in Mallorca. IGA Swiatek just moved in. And the tennis world, panicked, fascinated, completely gripped, cannot look away. What happens when the student and the champion share the same roots, the same coaches, the same clay, and the exact same ambition? There is only one way to find out. And it starts the moment the draw is announced at Roland Garros. Because the real story is not in a training video. It is not in a coaching announcement. It is in every single point these two women play against each other on red dirt. Two players shaped by the same legend, on a collision course that the Nadal Academy was never quite big enough to contain. So tell me, do you think Swiatek using the Nadal Academy gives her an unfair psychological edge over Eala? Or is Eala already 3 moves ahead and the rest of us just cannot see it yet? Drop your answer in the comments right now, because this debate is nowhere near finished.